got Mark Kane in the frame this week for Nick Murray, you reckon? Or?
Oh, we'll go through that. It's pretty early. We're still going through the game on the weekend, so we'll tidy up today with the review of Geelong, team meeting with the boys, and then I guess as match committee we'll sit down tomorrow to go through that a little bit more.
Would he be physically ready? I know it's been, I guess, when he came, he was doing like 1k runs or something. Yeah, is he physically ready to play AFL?
Yeah, like I said though, we're not going to talk about one particular player because we've still got to go through it. So whether we're going to highlight one player, we're not going to do that today because there's options there for us. We'll go through that, but that discussion will be pretty intense probably the next day or two.
Hasn't he?
No, he's good. Yeah, he's good. Yeah, just a bit of a knock. He's a bit frustrated, obviously. Knew what was going on, but he's under the protocols now, so it should only be the one game that he misses.
Mark was pulled out of the SANFL when you found out that Nick went down. Is that right? Or?
No, they played at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they could have even started maybe just before us, but yeah, no, that wasn't the reason.
What was the wash-up, Burnsy, do you think, from the weekend?
Yeah, the wash-up, look, there's a lot of things we did quite well, but you're playing against a team that's obviously the premiership team from last year, but they've found some form over the last month, and on their home deck they play that ground very, very well, and they just sort of had us at arm's reach, I think, for most of the game. Although we started really well early, we should have capitalised a little bit more in the first 20 minutes that we didn't, but a lot of that was to do with their defence, their desperation in their D50. But it was pleasing to the extent that with 3 minutes to go we were a chance to maybe get within a goal again, but couldn't quite finish a couple of plays off, and they finished off with a couple of late goals themselves. So look, great team. It's going to be pretty hard for any team to get 4 points against them down there. So there are a lot of positives, but it shows us where if we want to be a top team in this league, there's still a few little steps to make.
So 1 point against Collingwood, 4 goals. I mean, over the course of the journey, there may be a goal a quarter better than your younger side. What does it say about where you guys are at that you push Collingwood, you give Geelong a run as well?
I think everyone can see that there's improvement from the last 12 to 18 months. There's no doubt about that, and we know when we're all up and about, when we're working in unison in offence and defence, that we put a lot of things. We play a lot of good quarters of football. It's not just about looking pretty, scoring goals, but we can be pretty miserly at times as well. We've shown that over the last 5 weeks. So it's a combination, and there's been some players that have played some really good football, younger players that have really taken the next step, and some older players that are playing as well as they have in the past and adding a lot to the team.
What are the key areas to work on over the week, I suppose?
Recovery, as much as anything. We'll make sure we do that over the next 2 to 3 days. We're playing a team that's been fantastic over the first 8 weeks. That they're, I think, the best defensive team in the comp. Very hard to score against. Bring a great contest, and they can certainly hurt you when they go forward. So we know it's going to be a challenge, but we've got to do a bit of repair work against with ourselves over the next 3 to 4 days, just to tidy up and get a little bit of electricity back in our legs probably, and look a little bit sharper. So we'll be making sure we do that so we're ready for Sunday's game.
Do you think there's a possibility, given I guess St Kilda has a little bit of lack of height up forward, that you maybe only go with the one key defender and true key defender in Butsy?
Yeah, like so, there's a bit to be discussed there yet, so we'll go through that. At the moment, I've just come out of a Geelong review meeting, and we're still getting all our edits ready to show the players today. So when we talk about St Kilda specifically in more detail, that'll be later in the week.
Burnsy, Nixie flirted with resting Sloaney and Tex. You end up taking him up to Geelong. You come back. I think you've got 3 of your next 4 against top 8 sides. How now do you weigh up when they're going to get a recovery before the bye?
Yeah, probably wouldn't use the word flirting, but it's always in discussions when you have older players and younger players. There's a time when they may need to be managed, and we've certainly got to keep an eye on the blokes that are 25, 28 that are doing a lot of work as well, and they might need a freshen up at some stage. So it can be horses for courses. It certainly can be gut feel on some players, on the older ones, just when to freshen them up, when to make sure that they don't go over the edge. And like I said, we've got both extremes at the moment. We've got the older players that have been around for a long time that get hit, they get knocked around, but there's probably half a dozen younger players too that haven't played too much footy that we just have to be mindful of. But when they're all playing, like we said earlier with Theo, with the points of where we've been against some better teams, we're around the mark at the moment, so the form's been quite solid for most of them, and you don't want to flirt with form and just take someone out for the sake of taking someone out, but we have to get ahead of the curve and make sure that the boys don't get to a bit of a rut or get too tired.
Yeah,
in
do
terms
you mention electricity?
Some of the younger players, Joshua Shelley might be one that you might look at it, maybe managing his AFL load tonight.
Yeah, well, I think any of the players that are probably 2 years and under, especially you got to be mindful of. But that's the same. Like I said, you got Sloaney and Tex that are 33 as well, and you know Laird does so much work for us inside, and you got Riley O'Brien that get knocked around week after week. So it is like I said, it will be horses for courses, but you got to be mindful. But you don't flirt with form just for the sake of taking somewhere out. We're not that team at the moment. We want to push players through a little bit of soreness, and because the reality of AFL football is that you have to play with niggles and injuries and get your job done at times. But there is a tipping point, and we've just got to be mindful of that.
Is Josh one of those blokes that is a bit sore, given that he's been down on form, the 8 touches on the weekend?
No, not at this stage, no.
What have you learned the last 2 weeks playing against Collingwood? You know, the team that many think will be right up to the 20 of the season, the reigning premiers in Geelong.
I wouldn't say learnt anything, but it just consolidates where we're at, where we need to get better. Consolidates that Collingwood, Geelong are 2 decent teams. They've got huge ability, some really good players, some really good experience that we're still building at this point in time. But like as we said earlier, I think we've got 4 blokes over 200 games. So there's quite a fair bit of learning still with players that have only been in the system for 5 years or less, and they've been able to match it for the most part of the games with some of these better players and these better teams, but we haven't quite been able to play 4 quarters.
With the next few weeks against top 8 sides, how important is it for you guys to get a win over the next few rounds to keep your final hopes up?
Yeah, look, it's just we focus on this one first of all. I know everyone hates the cliches and that's it, but they're all hard games. It doesn't matter who you've got, where teams are on the ladder. It's a really even competition. You can see there'll be a lot of teams around that 3 to 4 win mark now at the moment on the ladder that they could easily have runs of winning 4 games in 5 weeks. There's some good teams that still are finding their feet. But for us, we've got we've played some very good teams the last 2 weeks and another good one this week. So we just got to make sure that we're ready to go on Sunday, and we play the way we want to play, but also very mindful of the strengths of St Kilda.
You're like Steve Smith at one point, you just couldn't stop scoring hundreds, you guys, but then teams have sort of limited you. What do you put your lack of, well not lack of, but reduced scoring capacity down to?
You know, Theo, you can make some very good 70s and 80s at times. It's not all about hundreds, is it? No, there might be some dodgy decks, and opposition might be a bit too good where you just got to survive. And look, we've been really happy with the defensive side of our game. There's no doubt about that. That's taken steps which it needed to over the last 5 weeks. We've had plenty of opportunities though to score more points, so that we just probably haven't finished our work. That's the simplicity of it, that's an easier work on rather than not getting the supply.
And why are St Kilda so hard to score against, do you think?
I'd say they're Team D. They're very good at the contest. They'll compress the ground when they need to, and they've obviously got a coach that's coached. He's had a heap of experience in having teams absolutely be able to strangle opponents, and there's no doubt he's brought that, and they're going very well at the moment.
Is there a way around that? I mean, obviously mine goes straight back to the Carlton night, the blueprint of they run a gun style and 118, I think it was high score under Nixie. If that's the template you'd like to execute, is there a way to implement that more consistently, especially against the Saints?
No, all games are different. You've got to find different ways to win. That's the beauty about this industry. There's teams that will move the ball differently against us. We've got to defend slightly differently, and there'll be teams that might be in your face defence. They might fold back. So you've got to find different ways to score, different avenues. And St Kilda are a little bit similar probably to Collingwood and Geelong that we've played over the last 2 weeks, but do 1 or 2 things a little bit differently. But it's as we saw the last 2 weeks, it's hard to score against the best teams, and it'll certainly be hard to score against St Kilda this week.
Saints' last loss was against Port. We're going to look back and have a see how they did it.
Yeah, we'll look at all the games, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And I thought even North had opportunities yesterday they might not have capitalised on. So there's all the games we go through and look for strength and weaknesses of the upcoming opposition.
How much of a weapon is your fast starts against Tigers really sort of getting off to a good start in the first quarter?
Well, I'm not sure what the stats would say, but I'd sooner get a good start than not. So, but yeah, look, everyone talks about how you come out as a team, but sometimes the fast starts might be the other teams a little bit on their back heels as well, and we don't expect St Kilda to be that team.
Even Ross has admitted speed isn't their sort of strength, and when you guys move the ball, you go quick, you go direct. Is there the case to make to be a bit more daring and a bit more like you were in those games where you did score highly to use that ball?
Well, it's every situation, every scenario is different too. It depends where you are on the field, whether you want to go quicker, whether you need to control the ball. But when the opportunities do present, yeah, you have to take the game on. There's no doubt about that. We don't want to be a stagnant team, but we don't want to be a silly team too and just plays away to opposition's extra numbers.
How are you feeling with your forward line? The three bigs up there, Tex obviously hit the scoreboard and 5 were quiet again, and Riley too, they
Yep.
still working?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Riley was excellent the week before, I think he took about 6 contested marks. And Foggs, had a great first game back from that knee. But there's certainly headaches for the opposition. There's a fair bit of homework that needs to go into those 3 boys if you're the opposing defensive team.